I tried to sneak my oversized bag onto Ryanair and Wizz Air 4 times. See, budget airlines will charge you for everything, and once you start adding extras, they can actually cost more than a normal airline. There's seat selection, onboard dining, priority boarding, but the thing they charge for more than anything else is your luggage. They give you this much space, and if your bag is even just a little too big, you could get hit with a fee that's many times more than your ticket. 30, 50, 70, even 100 euros. But if you do manage to avoid paying for any extras, budget airlines can be shockingly cheap. So, is it really even possible to fly them without paying anything extra, even on more than just a quick weekend trip? I realized there was only one way to find out. So I went ahead and booked myself some tickets on two of the world's most hated budget airlines, Ryanair and Wizz Air. And I mean, let's just have a look what people say about them. Callum from the UK said he'd rather walk than take Ryanair. Oliver from Costa Rica calls them an organized scam. Of Wizz Air, Reza from Sweden says never ever again. And Alicia from Ukraine, she says Wizz Air isn't just the worst airline ever, but the worst company ever. Reading those kinds of reviews, you'd think I was out of my mind for even considering stepping on board. But of course, with the promise of saving tons of money, I didn't let that stop me. Maybe I should have read a few more reviews, because while I was traveling, one of Ryanair's worst incidents in recent history happened. But we'll talk about that later. To find out the truth though, I knew one flight on each airline just wouldn't cut it. So I flew 4 times, twice on each airline, and brought a bag that's technically too big by both of their carry-on rules. The goal? Sneak this aboard all 4 flights without paying any extra fees. If I get caught, I'll owe a massive fee. But if I make it through, I'll get all 4 flights for less than a single checked bag on many airlines. Along the way, I'll share some hacks that I've learned to beat budget airlines at their own game. After all, flying budget airlines hundreds of times before is one of the key reasons I'm able to keep traveling around the world all the time. So buckle up, hit that like button, and if all goes well, we're in for a smooth ride 4 times in a row. My first flight was on Wizz Air, from Berlin, Germany to Tirana, Albania. Once I'd made my way to the airport and gotten through security, it was time to face the first test. I'd already measured my bag after packing and knew it was a little too big. But just how much? Wizz Air's underseat carry-on is 40 by 30 by 20 centimeters, just a little bit more generous than Ryanair's, which we'll see later in the video. On its side, my bag almost fits, but it's a few centimeters too wide. Upright, it becomes too tall and too wide. And Wizz Air's maximum weight is 10 kilograms. Luckily, I at least met the standard there. After all, my bag was not full of rocks. But it was time to head to my gate and attempt to get my bag on the first flight. By the way, I avoided using the bag sizer at my boarding gate. That's an easy way for the airline to notice your bag is too big. So here I am in line, and it's looking like they're checking people real good today. Let's see. I can already see over here on the right side, the gate agents already stopped a few different people, even with backpacks, to check them. This time it might have actually paid off not to pay extra for priority. But in the meantime, our plane has just pulled up over there. It's an A321, which is the biggest airplane that Wizz Air flies. Hey. Okay. And I have made it through. Just waiting to actually be able to board over my plane over there. But usually, once you've had your boarding pass scanned, you're almost always good. And these planes often do 6, 7, 8, even maybe 9 flights a day, depending on the flight time, because they turn them around really quick here. Basically, for budget airlines like this, the name of the game is to spend as little time on the ground as possible and as much time in the air flying and making money. And just one last short hurdle before I'm officially able to board. That is without paying any extra fees. And I've got seat 16A, which technically on your boarding pass on this aircraft will tell you to board in the front. I can see the line in the back is just a little bit shorter, and since they decided to separate me and my wife, but just by like 2 rows, since her boarding is in the back, I'm gonna go with the back too. And just a few more steps before I'm officially on board with my bag and my jacket and good to go to Tirana, Albania. And as it often can mean, low-cost airline also means that flight attendants pay maybe just a little bit less attention to you when you board, which when there's super strict baggage rules is probably a good thing. Well, I've made it over here to 16C. There's actually a ton of space up above, but I just thought I'd keep my bag down since all the stuff I need to use during the flight is in there anyway. And I mean, it really fits like a charm. This feels better than other Wizz Air flights I've been on too, to be honest. There's a nice little space here to store your stuff, and the fast turnarounds means they don't really have much time to clean, if any, so. But of course, the most important thing, flight 1 out of 4 with slightly oversized baggage. Check. You can read all about their fees on wizzair.com. Or do they just prefer to be called Wizz? Who knows? It was their birthday though. Soon enough, we pushed back and headed off over to our takeoff runway. And although Wizz did purposefully separate my wife and I because we didn't want to pay for seats, those were some pretty nice views. So we cruised on down south, and soon enough we were almost in Tirana. And it's a completely on-time flight, smooth rolling, and who doesn't love a window? But once I get over to Tirana, I'll have another Wizz Air flight to take. Bit of a shorter one, over to Pescara, Italy, where we can get more of an idea of how Wizz Air bag enforcement looks at, well, more than one airport. I'd nearly forgot. Here we are, just about to enter our final descent into Tirana Airport, just flying over Montenegro still actually, and I remembered I'd actually packed another bag in my small bag, a large bag. So while certainly not mandatory, if you want to make your space go even farther on low-cost airlines like this, just bring a collapsible bag like this. It's maybe double or triple the size of your small bag. Put it inside of your small bag, and the second you're on board, pull out the larger bag, put your small bag in it, and you're good to go. Actually, I've never been to Albania before, but I guess I'm not going to be needing this jacket until my next stop. So, I've been over here in Albania for a few days, and it's just about time for me to go take my second Wizz Air flight to give them another test, just to see, well, how consistent they are really. Are they gonna let me on the plane with my slightly oversized bag or not? You can see this bag looks a lot bigger than it might have looked before when I showed it to you, because at the very bottom is my jacket, which is taking up about 1/3 of this 25-liter backpack. You can see I've also got that second black bag that I started with that's also just like a little tiny bit oversized, as we saw over at Berlin Airport. But this trip that I'm taking, well, I'm not just traveling to show you 4 different low-cost carrier flights. I guess I'm just not that much of a masochist. I'm not Noel Phillips. Nope, along the way, I'm getting out and exploring each country that I'm stopping in, spending 5 nights in Albania, 3 nights in Italy, and a few nights in Lithuania. But for about a week-and-a-half long trip, I think I've pretty much found the perfect packing equation that allows you to avoid having to pay any extra fees while taking longer trips using budget airlines wherever you happen to be in the world. So I made another video for you that goes through exactly what I pack when flying budget airlines that you might want to watch after this one. But for now, we do have a flight to catch. It's now time to head back to the airport and give Wizz Air a second try before we try out Ryanair twice after that. Will I manage to board this next flight without having to pay anything, even though my bag is slightly oversized? There's only one way to find out. Since I had some extra time at the airport, I thought I'd give the lounge a try. It might not have been the snazziest, but they had plenty of Albanian food and drinks. And yeah, I only paid about 10 euros for this Wizz Air flight I'm about to take, by the way. We'll go over all the prices of each flight that I'm taking, though, at the end of the video, so stay tuned for that. But it really doesn't matter how much you paid or what airline you're flying. You can access this lounge over at Tirana Airport with Priority Pass. But here I am, even though it's a warm climate, with my jacket on and my backpack all ready to go over to the airplane. And my plane was coming in from somewhere in the Netherlands, Eindhoven, and it arrived just a little bit late, but over there you can see Pescara's on the board. That's going to be my gate just right over there. And I've got exactly the same stuff in my backpack as what I had back in Berlin. So let's see if I can get through this easy. ID as well?
Just your boarding pass, it's okay. Thank you. Okay, have a nice flight.
So far no problem at all, and you can see my Wizz Air plane that just landed is parked and looks like it's already deplaned from the people that came in from the Netherlands, and we should be boarding soon. I thought maybe that given that this is kind of a Wizz Air hub, they might have, I don't know, a little bit more control going on, but that does not seem to be the case. But again, I've still got a little bit of distance to walk before I'm officially on board with my bag. And we're boarding, and this time they've separated my wife and I all the way between the front and the back of the plane. So I'll be in seat 34F, with a window at least, and Rasa gets seat 5C. And looks like all clear. So this time she's gonna board in the front for real, and I'll board in the back. I'll see you later. And yeah, so far that's 2 for 2. Well, I've got just some stairs to walk up again, but I've never seen any baggage control basically after showing your boarding pass. Oh, it's loud here. And yeah, another thing that you're officially not supposed to do is use the overhead compartments unless you pay for like the full-size carry-on. But in practice, the flight attendants will always invite you to do so when there's space, so that's probably the first place this jacket's gonna go, assuming there's still space. Because it's like 80 something Fahrenheit or in the upper 20s in Celsius. It's quite warm here, but 5 minutes of wearing a jacket is a small price to pay to avoid 30, 50, 70, even 100 euros in fees for having a larger bag than you're supposed to. Wow, I can see my wife Rasa still hasn't been able to board either. And Wizz Air's arch nemesis, well actually maybe every traveler's nemesis, Ryanair's just rolling on by. In the next part, we're gonna see what it's like aboard 2 Ryanair flights. But as for Wizz Air, it looks like they've let me on board with no issues at all. Thanks, Wizz Air. How are you today?
How are you?
Good, man. 34F. Lots of space up there.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on this Wizz Air flight with destination Pescara.
Now this is really a first Wizz Air. We are delayed because there is a hole in the tarmac apparently, and the airport has to figure out how to get this airplane to push back out. Well, I don't know, like 10 seconds after saying that, they pushed back. I didn't see any hole. Did look like there was like some fixes in the cracks, but yeah, should be off. Almost on time. Not quite, but almost. And what can I say? The bag fits like a charm. There was space for my jacket, and we're just about to take off and head over to Italy. Here we go. My second Wizz Air flight was pretty much exactly like my first, just shorter. They purposefully separated me and my wife again, and the views of the Adriatic Sea were as nice as ever. So, cruising along and not quite, but almost on time. But as it turns out, 2 flights with Wizz Air, 2 flights with no issues getting my slightly oversized bag on board. So, is Ryanair stricter, or could they care even less? Let's get ourselves over to Italy so we can hop on board and find out. Thank you. I'll see you all next time. Italia. Ryanair time. And my trek to the airport today is just about as easy as could be because I was just staying right over across that street, and this is the airport. I've got a few snacks, but other than that, it's just the same backpack, the same jacket, and I guess I'm ready to go on this 2-hour Ryanair flight. I don't know. The last few times I flew Ryanair, the vibe was definitely that there weren't that many people working at the gate. They were a little delayed, and nobody was checking anything. Even less so than Wizz Air. At least that's how it felt to me. But that was already a few months back. So let's see what it's like today flying Ryanair, and then we'll see one more Ryanair flight after this one, just to verify, assuming I do get on with this bag, that Ryanair is more or less actually pretty chilled out. Let's go head over here in the airport and see. This is a really small airport. A lot of the businesses aren't even open. My flight's at like 9:25 a.m. It's basically just Ryanair at this airport, almost solely. There's like one Wizz Air flight, which I came here on. And then that's really it. On the other side of the airport is my gate and one other gate with a flight that's departing around the same time. Today I'm flying over to Kaunas, Lithuania, the second biggest city in Lithuania. Not the first biggest, that's Vilnius, or Vilnius as some like to call it. But I did give the Ryanair sizer over there a test, and surprisingly my bag kind of sort of fits in it. The thing about Ryanair's that I've found, that just, I don't know, I've never seen them enforcing stuff like down to the centimeter. And technically, the size of your not full-size carry-on that you're allowed to bring on with any ticket is 40 by 20 by 25 centimeters, which is even slightly smaller than the underseat carry-on that Wizz Air lets you have. But in action, I don't know. We're gonna see. How about that? Thing is though, well, I've gone a little bit under the weather, honestly, traveling over in Italy. A little bit out of it. I just can't eat that fast. So, I've got my bag of food still, and it doesn't fit in my regular bag. So I'm just gonna see if I can't roll through with that. Let's see. From my view, it looks like there's just one agent working the boarding gate, and she's not too concerned about bags. So, that seems like a good sign. Let's see. So far, so good. I guess my suspicions were correct. I got through, and it's just a short walk on the tarmac over to our plane, and the line is moving now. I've got to say, I've got like a false sense of confidence at this airport, because there's like nobody working for Ryanair here, which means there's nobody to enforce the bag rules. But you know what they say about confidence. So let's get inside the plane, and then we'll see. You can really see just how small this airport is. There's just 2 Ryanair planes here at the moment. There's just a little bit of a wait over here before we could actually board, but they just started boarding the first few people. And here we go. Looks like another roaring success here. 3 for 3, almost. By the way, Ryanair flies 2 types of planes. This is the older 737, and actually the plane parked next to it is the 737 MAX, their newer airplane. And you can see, I believe just for tax purposes, it says like operated by Malta Air up there. They've got a bunch of different like tax subsidiaries based in different countries. I think Buzz in Poland. I couldn't tell you all of them though. And here we've made it on board. I believe I'm really lucky with all 3 of these flights. Because, I don't know, I've been on some Ryanair flights that have been a lot tighter than this, and they've been a lot longer than this. This is only like a 2-hour flight. Pretty acceptable. I even got my sandwich that I made for myself this morning with me. And you can see my bag fits just fine, and I've been living in Germany for one too many years because I'm wearing socks under my sandals. Yes, I am. But as much as I do like my seat, my wife's seat is apparently in the emergency row. So I looked up, I'm in row 4, seat 4A. My wife got row 16, seat 16A, but there is quite a bit of empty space up here. So maybe, just maybe, we'll have the chance to sit together in row 4 without paying anything for it. Let's see if boarding complete doesn't get called pretty soon. Oh yeah, I can see Ryanair is taking up their steps that they bring around with them everywhere. By the way, those steps, as much as I guess everyone just kind of hates walking up and down them, I mean look, they're really steep. They're one of the big reasons that Ryanair is able to like stop at an airport for 20 or 30 minutes, then board and then keep going to the next airport. Watch, that's like a matter of 10 seconds right there. So yeah, Ryanair is definitely that airline everybody loves to hate. I mean, sometimes for a good reason. But today it is turning out to be a pretty solid experience without having to pay for anything extra at all. Row 4's got solid legroom and the views from the window seat at takeoff were pretty beautiful. This might actually be the nicest Ryanair flight I've ever even been on. Of course they do sell some food on board too, but you really can't beat an Italian cold cut sandwich that you made yourself. I mean, these are some premium products. I got mortadella di pistachio. I got alta qualità or high quality cooked prosciutto and a little bit of provolone on the bottom. An Italian cold cut sandwich with views of Croatia. Sitting in row 4 means being among the first to deplane too. Just like Wizz Air, Ryanair purposely will give people on the same ticket seats away from each other to entice them to pay for selecting seats together. But honestly, depending on what they're charging, I'd actually consider paying a little extra to sit up here in the future. So far, the Wizz Air and the Ryanair experience are all in all quite similar. They both let me bring my oversized bag on board without issue 3 times in a row. And while all of the long printed rules on their website or when you buy a ticket might seem a bit intimidating, in reality, when you get on board, these airlines don't usually have like a ton of people working for them, and everyone stays pretty busy. Working for a low-cost carrier is definitely not an easy job, and definitely not one I could imagine myself doing, for example. But honestly, although contact is minimal, all 3 flight crews have been comparable to what you'd find on any full-cost carrier in Europe, you know, British Airways, Air France, Lufthansa, whatever. So just for good measure, we've got one more short Ryanair flight to take, just to see if 2 times in a row on Ryanair I'll be able to board with my oversized baggage or not. So once we get over to Lithuania and on board our 4th low-cost flight, we can go over exactly how much each of these 4 flights cost, as well as some other observations and details I've noticed along the way when it comes to flying low-cost carriers like Wizz Air and Ryanair in Europe without paying for extra baggage. Now, one concern I often hear about budget airlines in general, definitely Ryanair and Wizz Air, is people worried about how safe those kind of airlines actually are. The obvious answer is that in the EU, the safety standards are as high as could be, so they're very, very safe. They're just as safe as any other airline, basically. But there is a little bit of turbulence on this flight, which really doesn't necessarily relate back to safety in any way. But all that said, just a few days before I'm taking this flight, Ryanair did have an emergency landing on a flight that was departing from Berlin, bound for Milan airport, I believe. And yeah, it just flew right into like the middle of a very, very strong storm that I would assume air traffic control would usually tell you not to fly into. So not exactly sure what happened there. did put me a little bit on edge boarding this flight, but the truth about airline safety on any airline operating in the EU is that it's very, very high. Oh, bravo! Grazie.
Ciao, arrivederci.
Ciao. Konus. But after a few days in Lithuania, it was time to make my way over to Vilnius airport for my fourth and final attempt to sneak my oversized bag on board. And here I am at my fourth and final airport. Same backpack, same jacket. But in Lithuania during the summer, this jacket actually comes into good use. Of course, when you're traveling around to different climates, it's always a good idea to have some kind of not too light but also not too heavy jacket like this one. And the plus when you're flying on budget airlines like Ryanair or Wizz Air is that there are pockets that you can kind of just sneak things into. Well, all I've gotten here is a tissue, but the idea would be like to take the camera that I'm recording this on, put that in this pocket, or take an extra pair of shoes and put them in the pocket, and then you can still get on board with your one slightly oversized bag. But on that topic, it is still slightly oversized. There is still a chance that Ryanair is going to charge me a €75 fee. So far 3 out of 3, but there's one more flight left to go, and let's see if I can get on board successfully without having paid any extra money to these low-cost carriers. And one observation right off the bat, there you can see, is one of the Ryanair check-in counters. You want to avoid those at all costs, because that just increases your chances of having a bunch of time up there talking to someone, with them constantly having the chance to take a look at the size of your bag. Basically, the less interaction you have in person with the airline, the better. Plus, there is the fact that a lot of those airlines, such as Ryanair, will actually charge you a fee to check in at the desk. You've got to check in their app. Anyway, they don't want you to talk to them. You don't want to talk to them. Don't go to the check-in desk. Let's go ahead through security here, though. So once I'd made my way through security with time to spare, I headed over to the airport lounge. And again, I've just made a nice little stop at the lounge, despite flying a low-cost carrier like Ryanair. I just entered with priority pass, and it's a solid little lounge, which also reminded me, another great thing to keep in your pockets. It's a little snack. By the way, I end up over here at Vilnius airport quite a lot, a few times a year usually. And they just redid their terminal. It's sparkly and kind of nice. And this is my gate, A4. But I actually made the mistake of leaving the lounge a few minutes too early, so we're just sitting over here for a few minutes. But you can see a lot of people could not resist the urge to already start lining up, which in my experience is a pretty big no-no when it comes to flying any low-cost airline. Well, first off, our aircraft is gonna land here in 2 minutes, so there's no way boarding is gonna happen anytime that soon. But if you're at all concerned about the fine details of your baggage size or weight being checked, if you're one of the first in the line and the plane is not delayed, the chances of you being checked are just going to be a lot higher naturally. But here you can see the plane just rolled up over here. So once I get the plane deplaned over here, we can go ahead and hopefully get on board without any extra payments involved. And it is not a good sign. I can see someone is actually getting checked. It doesn't have a bag that's much larger than mine. Oof, that could mean as much as €75. A little worried that my luck might have run out, I made my way over to the boarding line. And I'm almost there. Let's see how this goes. Yeah, my best guess is that that person had 2 separate bags, and that was the reason they were stopped, but let's see. Hi. Thank you. Phew. 1, 2, 3, 4. Check. Well, almost. I do actually have to really get on board there. Hopefully I'll be okay, though. Once we're on board, we can go over exactly what I paid for all 4 of these flights and a few final thoughts about flying budget airlines like this around Europe with slightly oversized baggage, or without slightly oversized baggage. And this time I happen to have the most wonderful seat on the plane, the middle seat in row 11. Just kidding, it's not that wonderful. But there's such a huge line to board via the front of the plane, because often people just don't realize that you can board via the back of the plane. And although my ticket recommends that I board via the front of the plane, the back of the plane obviously has a lot less of a line. Oh. So I made it on board my second Ryanair flight, and Rasa took her not middle seat while I headed up front for my middle seat. It turns out someone had beat me to 11E though, because they also wanted to sit with their travel partner, so I swapped seats to 9E. Luckily, the flight time was pretty short, since this was a much more cramped experience than on my first Ryanair flight. But there's one place where you can get something for free on Ryanair. Let's go check that out, and I'll tell you how much I paid for all 4 of these flights. And this right here is basically the only free thing that you get when flying Ryanair, at least for now. The bathroom may not be that clean, but it's definitely free. But the question at hand here now is, how much did I pay for all 4 of these flights? Well, for the first flight, from Berlin over to Tirana, I paid 73 euros and 69 cents. And then from Tirana over to Pescara, it was quite a bit cheaper than that one. It was just a little bit over 10 euros. And then my third flight from Pescara to Kaunas cost me 25 euros and 65 cents. And finally, this short Ryanair flight from Vilnius over to Berlin cost 40 euros and 2 cents. So all in all, for right around 150 euros, I was successfully able to take 4 flights without paying any extra fees at all. Mission accomplished. Obviously, this is just my experience on 4 flights, and baggage rules are rules. If you break them, no matter how silly they are, airlines can hold you accountable. If they actually will is a different story. So yeah, that's pretty much what it's like to fly with Wizz Air and Ryanair on these 4 flights. But what do you think? Are budget airlines a necessary evil, or just something that you'd avoid at all costs? Definitely drop a comment down below with what you've got to say about that. And if you did like this video, please don't forget to give it a like. That helps get it to as many people as possible. And if you're not subscribed, make sure to do that right now.